summer league. I
That's
mean, the
right.
guy,
That's
give it a
right.
break.
Yep, yep, yep. You got to get in there. Well, hey, man, it's great to meet you. And I want to begin our conversation with surviving a global pandemic. How did you get through the last 3.5 years, and how did it change you?
Well, I'll tell you, it's very interesting. Our business increased, Joe, because we're in the health insurance and healthcare world. Uh, all of a sudden, people that never wanted health insurance before said, you know what would be awesome if I had some health insurance.
Yeah,
But you know what? They ran into some of the same problems that are inherent in our system. And just because you have health insurance doesn't mean you actually have access to health care. A lot of people think they're the same thing. And we've actually been kind of brainwashed in this country to think that health insurance and healthcare are the same. So much so that the government even calls the website where you go to get your health insurance healthcare.gov. But you can't buy any healthcare there, Joe.
right.
You can't buy one iota of healthcare on healthcare.gov. All you can buy is an insurance plan where you may have to wait months to see a doctor. So what we saw was a bigger scream out from people to say, hey, how can I get access to health care? Because this plan is just not doing it for me. So we really saw a lot of people, we really focus on some alternative ways of accessing health care. In fact, direct accessing healthcare with direct contracting to hospitals and surgery centers and direct primary care doctors, advanced primary care, even say urgent care centers. We give people direct access. So if you have a membership to one of those, you don't pay copays, you don't pay deductibles, you don't pay anything out of pocket. You don't have to worry about a bill coming later like you do whenever you have a traditional insurance plan. So the pandemic really made people start thinking differently. Yeah. It really kind of got people going in a different direction, saying, hey, what I really want is to talk to a doctor, and I want to talk to someone I trust. You saw it, we all saw it. A lot of mistrust in the medical industry, then in the healthcare industry, because people didn't know who to believe. A lot of that was because the insurance companies and the way that they have controlled the amount of time doctors can spend with you, they have not given people the opportunity to have relationships with their doctors like we used to have when we were younger, like our parents did and our grandparents did. There was true relationships there, and you trusted your doctor. And people were not as hesitant to listen to their doctor's advice at that time. But now there's no relationship. When you only have 5 to 7 minutes at best with your doctor, there's no relationship there, Joe. Yeah. So it changed. The pandemic has helped change the mentality of people. There's a long way to go. Let me not change that. There's a long way to go. The insurance companies have a really strong hold on what's going on there. In fact, you may or may not know this, Joe, but the largest employer of physicians in this country is United Healthcare. United Healthcare employs over 90,000 physicians in this country. Conflict of interest much?
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's wild. So let's get to the heart and soul of what you do for a living. If I put you in front of a bunch of third graders, it's career day. One of the kids looks up curiously and asks you, what do you do for a living? How do you answer them?
I help people get access to health care. I help them understand the difference, once again, between health insurance and health care. So we are, it's a strange term, we are a health care supply chain company.
Okay.
So what does that mean, right? What is a healthcare supply chain company? What in the world would you possibly do? Well, if you ever were able to look in the box, what we call the BUCA box. Now, BUCA is Blue Cross, United, Cigna, and Aetna. BUCA. All right. So if you look into the BUCA box to see how they run things, what you would see is a supply chain. You would see people that control your medications and your claims and your medical management. So your pre-authorization, right? You would see all of those things, your networks, all of that is part of your plan, but no one knows how that's built. Well, we were able to open the box up, look and see what was going on. And amazingly enough, this is pretty public knowledge if you go out there and find it. Almost all of that supply chain that they use is their own supply chain. So they're using their own companies to provide all these different services, or sometimes they even borrow from one of the other BUCAs. They're all friends at the end of the day, which is kind of a funny deal whenever they're competitors. But when you see the way that it's built, you're like, well, wait a second, I can do that. And I can do that with trusted partners whose main goal is people, not profit. There's nothing wrong with profit, Joe, nothing wrong with it at all. But profiteering is what they're doing.
Yeah.
And if you don't believe that they're profiteering, go and look and see what their stock prices were before Obamacare or when it was passed and what it looks like now. For example, United Healthcare was at about $30 a share. Now it's at 550 plus.
Wow.
Pretty good deal if you can get it, right?
Yeah.
So we really put together that supply chain for small companies, even for larger companies, whenever they'll let us talk to them and they want to hear this, because so many of them have been brainwashed into believing that they have to have Blue Cross or one of these other guys to really help their company. But we have a lot of believers now. We have a lot of folks out there. There's not a lot of folks that do what we do, but those of us that do it are very good at it. And we have helped save companies millions upon millions of dollars and provided their employees true access to healthcare.
So let me ask you this. When you were in the third grade, what was your dream? What did you want to be when you grew up?
Man, that's been a long time ago, Joe, but I promise it wasn't this.
So I guess that's my next question. Where were you born and raised, and how did these seeds get into you to get to this point? Because you're obviously doing very important work in a very tricky world of people trying to get coverage and get good health care. How did this happen?
Yeah, so I was born and raised in Houston, Texas, north of town there, kind of a country-ish boy. You can say, hey, how were you a country boy in a big city? I grew up just far enough away that we were still kind of in the country back in those days. It's interesting enough, where I grew up in Houston is now considered inner city.
Wild.
Yeah, it really is. Even the school district I was in was a country school district, and now it's an inner city school district. So it's kind of a funny deal there.
Yeah.
But grew up in Houston, once again, never had, of course, like a lot of kids, what did I want to do? I was going to play football. That's what I was going to do. You know, I played in high school and stuff, but then I decided I was going to be a journalist, and I went to college for journalism. I was going to be a newspaper guy. Boy, that wouldn't have worked out too well, right?
Yeah.
But what it really taught me was communication skills. So I was able to really utilize that in the corporate world when I went to work as a surveyor. So why in the world, right? I mean, absolutely nothing to do with anything you went to school with. How many people does that happen to? But I was there for 19 years, ended up in an environmental role. So I was an environmental specialist for a while, did emergency response and groundwater sampling and soil testing, things like that. And then they decided they didn't need me anymore, along with most of our department, whenever we were purchased by a larger company. So I had the very great blessing, and it was truly a blessing, of being relieved of my duties. And the good news was it allowed me to become an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And I won't go through the whole story, but through a number of circumstances, I ended up in the insurance industry, kicking and screaming. I had no desire whatsoever to do this, none whatsoever, and got my license and started kind of dabbling a little bit into it. Really was I guess you can say, very much a traditional insurance broker, selling traditional plans and believing all the things that we were told that the insurance companies are our friend, and did that for almost 10 years before the light went off. And the light went off because I watched my clients struggle. I watched them struggle to find doctors. I watched them struggle to get the care that they need and deserve. I watched them struggle to afford their deductibles. I watched them go bankrupt. I watched them not get the services they need because they were waiting for someone to approve something that their doctor had already proven time and time again that they needed. And whenever I saw this and I heard people literally crying out for help, can't you help me with something else? I was just led to do it. I mean, I truly believe I am doing the Lord's work, because I think this is, once again, this is not what I wanted to do. When someone said, why don't you create a plan? Why don't you do something for people better? I don't know how to do that.
Yeah.
How in the world would I do that?
Yeah.
But I was challenged, and I was challenged in a way that I felt like, you know what? I don't know how to do it, but I'm going to certainly figure out what we can do to help people. And that started the road down to what we are now in Eagle Care, and which is a very different kind of even place than where we started. We're doing so many more things now to give people true access to healthcare, that it truly is a mission. And I've got a lot of people that believe in what we're doing all around the country. We have people that offer our options and our ideas all around the country. And we're part of important organizations called such as the Free Market Medical Association, Next Gen Benefits. If you want to find out either of those, you can go out to fmma.org, or you can go to nextgenbenefits.network and learn more about what's going on there as well, because it's very important work.
So you're obviously an inspiration with what you're doing right now. Who's been a hero for you that's inspired you in your life?
Well, that's interesting. Of course, I'm very blessed to have an incredible father that has been a blessing in my life because of not being in this industry at all, but just being an honest, good man. And I think the integrity part that he taught me, and the importance of integrity and caring for people, there's no doubt that had a big impact. My mom is absolutely incredible in that way too. Just, the kindest person that would, the old thing of giving you the shirt right off her back, just the inspiration I've had from my parents. My wife of 32 years, the fact that she has been such a steadying force in our marriage and in our life. And the biggest inspiration of all is, my Lord Jesus Christ. I can tell you right now, that is the biggest inspiration of all, because without him, I would be nothing. Without him, I would have no future. Without him, I would have no direction. So that's really some of the biggest folks that have had an impact on my life. Now, in this industry, there's a gentleman by the name of Nelson Griswold, who he leads the Next Gen effort. There's also a gentleman up out of Wisconsin by the name of Matt Ort, who has an incredible story. He comes from the HR side, and he saw what was going on in this industry from the employer side. And he started making a move to help other employers change the way that they accessed healthcare. There is a DPC doctor, direct primary care. If you don't know more about that, folks, you need to learn about direct primary care. It's going to make a huge difference in this country in the way you access healthcare. Dr. Roger Muchagumbo here in San Antonio has been a leader in that effort. There are a number of people in our industry that have just made huge, huge inroads and are big proponents of that. The leaders of the FMMA, Jay Compton and Keith Smith, Dr. Keith Smith of the Surgery Center of Oklahoma, huge influences on what we do at Eagle Care Health Solutions, and my true passion for what we're doing.
So what's some of the best advice you've ever gotten in your life?
The gentleman who, Will Strother, who is the founder and CEO of the Federal Employee Service Association and a good friend of mine, he is the one who challenged me to build this plan. Even though I had no idea what I was doing, he challenged me to build Eagle Care. Just because you don't know how to do something, just because you have no idea what the end result is going to be, is not a reason not to give it a shot. Yeah. And that was really more or less what he told me. He's like, well, if you don't do it, then what's the result? What's really going to happen? Then nothing's going to change, and you're just going to keep on doing what you're doing. But is that what you want? No, that ain't what I want. That's not what I wanted. I already see the problems. He said, well, then fix it. So be challenged. Challenge yourself. Yeah, I mean, I shouldn't have even had to have him challenge me, right, Joe? I shouldn't have had to do that. But I needed that. I needed someone to push me. I needed someone to kind of call me out. But I think the fact that it was scary. Yeah. And I'll tell you, it still is. It still is. Whenever you start butting heads up against some of these big guys, and we're just we're so we so don't matter to them. But maybe one day,
yeah,
if it's not us, it's the movement that we're a part of. If that movement can make the inroads that we need it to, that we want it to, that it has to, that's the only way we're going to change access to healthcare in this country. And, we're seeing other things pop up now. I mean, we see it on TV. We see commercials now. We see other organizations that are doing a little bit more. We see more lawsuits against the big insurance companies now because of the way that they're not being fiduciary and they're not taking care of people. And the fraud that they've committed on multiple levels is finally being exposed. I think that it's coming, Joe. It's coming. But there's still a lot of work to do. And unfortunately, we get approached to be purchased all the time. And it's usually by one of these big companies because they want to quash you, right?
Yeah.
I mean, but it ain't going to happen.
Yeah.
Y'all just back off. You're listening out there, just back off. It ain't happening.
So of all the people that you've helped, you've obviously had a lot of success stories. What's one of your favorite ones?
Okay. So here is by far my favorite success story. One of the things that you find in this industry, and man, this just kills you, is when you're talking to someone, you say, okay, so the best help you, I need to know who your doctors are and what your medications are. Okay. That's the big thing, right? People don't want to not see their doctor and they want to make sure they get the medications. They want them affordable, such as it is, right? So I got this list from this fella, and it was pretty extensive list, Joe, about 25 medications. And I told him, hey, I'm not a doctor and I'm not going to pretend to be a doctor, but I know most of these medications. I've looked up all of these. About half of these that you're taking, buddy, are to counteract the side effects of the other half. You need to talk to your doctor or maybe find you another doctor. Well, Joe, he was mad. He was mad at me. I've known this doctor for years. He has my best interest at heart. Well, let me tell you something, Joe. If someone's put you on 25 medications, I'm just going to leave that hanging right there.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Okay. So it took me 2 years to convince him to go another route. That gentleman called me up about 2 weeks ago and said, Harlon, I want to apologize to you for being ugly to you and telling you my doctor knew what was better. I finally took your advice and went to another doctor. I'm only taking 4 medications now and I've lost 70 pounds.
That's crazy.
He's no longer on any insulin for diabetes. Yeah. He's no longer even considered pre-diabetic.
Wow.
How about that?
Wow.
But he was taking 3 insulins and a couple of other pills for diabetes. And he had just multiple things he was taking over and over. And so many of them were truly to counteract the side effects of others. So if I can really get that point across to anyone, medications are not always the answer, folks. I mean, there's so many things that can be done naturally. If your doctors, if you're only getting that 5 to 7 minutes with your doctor and all he ever does is prescribe you more medications or just send you to a specialist, it's time to get out of that. Find you a direct primary care doctor, find you an advanced primary care doctor that's going to build that relationship with you and give you time so that they can find out what's really going on. Wouldn't it be better to have a cure than just a Band-Aid? Because that's all medications really are in most cases, are just a Band-Aid. They just mask the symptoms instead of actually fix what the problem is.
Yeah. So you've gone through a lot of change in your life career-wise. Let's say you have a dream tonight and you run into the high school senior version of you, and you could give that young version of you a piece of advice based on the wisdom you've gained in your life. What advice would you give your younger version?
I think I would explain to them because, even when I was in the corporate world, when you're in the corporate world, it's really tough to see the problems that are in our industry. Really tough to see the problems in the healthcare industry because most times you're paying so little for your plan that you don't, and that's kind of changed somewhat, especially for family coverage. A lot of times it's really high now, but it's not high comparable. So if I could go back and explain to that person, don't know that I comprehended as a high school senior, but if I could explain the problems that we're facing, I would like to think that even back then I would be smart enough to understand that this is a pathway and a route that I would have taken earlier in life. While this was certainly not what my intended destination was, I know I have found my spot. I know I have. But I also believe that all the other things that I did along the way helped prepare me for this. So I really don't know that I would have said, do something different, because without the things that happened in my life and the experiences that I have, I don't know I would have the same view on things. I'd have the same perception of what's going on around us. The experiences that I've had in all of those years have made me who I am, have made me really a spokesperson for this movement, and have given me the desire and the passion to make this change. I don't know if I wouldn't have went through the things that I did, that I would have that same outlook, Joe.
So of all the things that you've done in your life so far, what are you the proudest of?
Being married for 32 years, and having two wonderful kids, kids that are respectful of people, kids that are, they say yes, ma'am, and yes, sir. Even the kids, even sometimes the kids their age, whenever they're being served, like at a restaurant or something, which is kind of funny to watch because I saw the same thing when I was growing up. But the fact that I have been through the ups and downs of marriage, there were plenty of times we could have called it quits. And we chose, even when we didn't like each other, we remembered that we loved each other and how much we complimented one another. And so we fought through it, and I have a stronger marriage and a stronger love for that. But there's no doubt the strength of my family and the love of my two children are the most paramount thing in my life, the biggest thing that certainly that I have accomplished on this earth.
So everyone out there has a perception of you, Harlon, family, friends, clients, colleagues, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Not good enough. Not good enough. Never good enough, because we always want to do better. My mantra in Eagle Care, and the folks that work with me get tired of it, is we can do better. We can do better. We can do better. Until we see true change that is sustainable. And, our goal, it's just a small goal, Joe, just a small one, is to bring quality access to healthcare to 1 million people in this country. Just a small goal.
Sure.
We got a little ways to go. But, I know, once again, I mentioned our Lord Jesus Christ earlier. I'll never reach his level, but if I can look to him and always do my integrity check and my truth check and my goal check with him, then I feel like I can do better. I'll never reach that level, and I'll never reach perfection or whatever. But of course, perfection is one of the biggest enemies you can have. If that's your thing, then you're always going to be a failure. But as long as I fail forward, I think I'll always be fine. As long as I can just keep failing forward, then we're continuing to move that rock up that pretty steep slope.
So you're doing wonderful work, Harlon. So the place to go to is eaglecare.com. If anyone's interested and wants to get involved, reaching out to you, anything else they need to know?
No, you can also find me on LinkedIn. I do quite a bit of stuff out there. We do a monthly audio room on LinkedIn on the last Tuesday of every month. And that is called Why Does Healthcare Suck? And we touch on different things in the healthcare world of what's wrong with it and how to fix it. In December, we're actually going to do one on healthcare heroes. So people that have made a positive impact. We want to do something positive for the holidays there, Joe. So, want to make sure that we get that out there. So that's the day after Christmas on the 26th. I also have my own podcast called the Health and Wealth Power Hour. You can find that on all of the regular places on Apple and Spotify, and even go out to hwpowerhour.com and subscribe there if you would like as well. And kind of like you do, Joe, we talk to people all over the spectrum. What doesn't have to do with your health or wealth, right? I mean, you never know who you're going to find on the Health and Wealth Power Hour. So it's a pretty cool deal.
I love it. You're doing wonderful work, Harlon. Thank you for your story. Thank you for your time. Have a great holiday season.
All right, you too, Joe. Merry Christmas to you, buddy.
Merry Christmas. Thank you, sir.